Hello and welcome to episode 166 of the official EstablishAndRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR, as always, joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva. And Evan, free agency is nearly upon us. March 17th, free agency will be hitting. Last episode, we talked wide receivers, we talked quarterbacks. On today's show, we are going to preview running backs and tight ends. How's it going?
It's going good. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Before we get into the show, on our mind, everyone, the draft kit is open. Not the 2020 draft kit, of course, the 2021 draft kit. We will be updating it continuously until September. Price is $34.99. If you had the draft kit last year and you haven't canceled it, it is free. Just log in and you'll be good to go. If you are new, head to the subscribe button and check it out. We're covering best ball mostly right now. We'll continue to add to that as we get closer. Okay, running backs. One of the biggest stories in fantasy this offseason is the Aaron Jones situation. Green Bay wants him back. I think they've been clear they want him back, but they don't want to spend a ton. The franchise tag for running backs, though, as the NFL has kind of condensed on their right opinion about what to pay running backs, the franchise tag for running back is only down to $8 million. And so as much as I would say people would be insane to spend franchise tag on the running back position, $8 million actually is a pretty good deal, I think, for Aaron Jones. Unlike most 26-year-old running backs, Aaron Jones only has 651 carries. And so he probably has a lot left on his tires, really something left on his tires. Obviously, very, very efficient player. Really interesting situation with Aaron Jones. How do you think this one plays out? And what would you do if you were the Packers?
Yeah, and so there's really only one free agent running back in realistic contention to become one of the highest paid players at that position this offseason. That's Aaron Jones. It's Aaron Jones in a tier unto his own. And Aaron Jones is a baller. He's like 95% of Alvin Kamara in my book. He can run wide receiver routes. He can make guys miss. He's been a touchdown scoring machine. I'd say he's even better as a runner between the tackles than is Alvin Kamara. But we've just seen time and time again that even the best and the most versatile running backs just don't move the needle enough from an on-field outcome standpoint to justify being worth major monetary investments from teams. Like the Packers would probably be fine if they let Aaron Jones walk and they roll with A.J. Dillon and they re-sign Jamal Williams to a cheap deal in all likelihood. But this is going to be all about landing spot. Maybe the Packers will buck up and put him on the franchise tag. In fantasy terms, we want Aaron Jones on a team that is going to be committed to featuring its running back in the passing game. I love the idea of Aaron Jones maybe on the Falcons with Arthur Smith and Matt Ryan and Julio coming back and Calvin Ridley and Hayden Hurst. The Bucks could be another one if they moved on from Leonard Fournette and they kind of gave up on Ronald Jones. And they committed to Aaron Jones as their main back. There's been some buzz about Aaron Jones and the Dolphins. But yeah, he's the clear-cut cream of the crop in this free agent running back class.
I'd ask you about A.J. Dillon because we did see him have one full game last year, and he was awesome in that one full game. From a dynasty perspective, from a best ball perspective, what do you think about A.J. Dillon now? Has your opinion changed since the draft last year when he was kind of billed as a Derrick Henry light, like a extremely homeless man version of Derrick Henry?
Well, we still have not seen him be a producer in the passing game. We don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams. I think that he's probably going to be a committee back and that they're not going to, even as they've had Aaron Jones, who's a true 3-down back, they haven't committed to him as a true, workhorse back. So, there are some windows there for A.J. Dillon to make a mark in fantasy and become a real fantasy factor, but he's going to have things go his way. When you look at it on paper right now, Aaron Jones is a free agent, Jamal Williams a free agent. So A.J. Dillon, he's got a shot.
Yeah. Chris Carson. One thing about Chris Carson, thought he played well in the pass game last year. He caught 3 balls per game. He's always been really good at breaking tackles. He's always seems like a really, really good NFL player. He's been banged up a lot. He hasn't missed a ton of games, but it feels like he's always banged up, is Chris Carson going to play this week? Well, he's got an ankle. he's got a knee situation, whatever it is, but he typically plays. He'll be 27. I don't know about the market for a 27-year-old Chris Carson who's been banged up. We know what Seattle wants to do. I mean, they want to establish the run. Brian Schottenheimer was fired for trying to let Russ cook. But can you really establish a run with Rashad Penny, Alex Collins, Carlos Hyde? They kind of need Chris Carson back, I think, if they really want to do it. But how much can you really pay a guy like Chris Carson? So what do you think happens here?
Yeah, and so I agree that, I think we've seen that Chris Carson's a really good back, that he has a 3-down skill set. He's big. He can run with power. He's proven himself to be a good receiver and improved that part of his game. But he runs with a lot of violence. I think you could say that he runs to contact, and he's been hurt an awful lot. And Chris Carson had an injury history at college, in college at Oklahoma State, and he's had significant injuries to his shoulder, his knee, his foot, and his hip in the NFL. So we'll see. But my early sense is that the Seahawks are not planning to re-sign Chris Carson. They're going to roll with Rashad Penny, who they wasted or used a first-round pick on a couple of years ago. They re-signed Alex Collins. They got DJ Dallas and Travis Homer on really cheap deals. Probably bring in another guy. But maybe that other guy will turn out to be Chris Carson, though, because I don't envision any other teams ponying up big money for him. I'm thinking he ends up at like 1 year, maybe $3 million. With possibility to get to like $5 million. He's going to be really cheap, I think.
Yeah, man, it's so brutal. Like Chris Carson's a really, really good player. And all this talk about running back, like people get it confused on social media. It's not that like, we don't think the person Chris Carson should get paid. Chris Carson is one of the best humans on earth at his position. It's just, there's not a lot of value in paying a guy like Chris Carson when you're talking about team building on a hard salary cap like the NFL has. So I feel for Chris Carson. And then when I did that podcast with Andrew Brandt, you can go back and listen to it from last year. He said the same thing, it just is what it is at the running back position. You actually like genuinely feel bad for them. But from a team building perspective, it's really hard to get behind giving a guy like Chris Carson, a lot of money. Leonard Fournette, Fat Len, a.k.a. Uncle Len, a.k.a. Playoff Len, a.k.a. Lombardi Lenny. Let's make no mistake, man. He was one of the worst third-round picks in fantasy last year. But even though he was healthy scratched, he still ended up being pretty valuable to the Bucs on their Super Bowl run, especially in the pass game. Like they thought he did really well in the screen game, and I thought he did as well. I don't know if he wants to share the work with Ronald Jones again. I'm sure he wants more money. I don't know if the Bucs will make it a priority to bring him back when they have Ronald Jones, when they use a draft pick on Keyshawn Vaughn. Maybe someone like the Steelers, and we'll talk about James Conner in a second here. Maybe someone like the Steelers wants Leonard Fournette to be their feature back. Leonard Fournette is used to touching the ball 20, 25 times a game. He seemed to really be enjoying himself, though, in Tampa. I know that's easy when you're winning Super Bowls. Really interesting on Leonard Fournette. What do you think happens here?
Yeah, so I think that like a team coming in overpaying Leonard Fournette based on a solid playoff run is a mistake that teams would have made 10 or even 5 years ago. But I don't think we're going to see that happen here. He does deserve credit for playing well in January and February. In 4 playoff games, he averaged 4.7 yards per carry, caught 18 of his 21 targets. He scored 4 touchdowns. He was solid, deserves recognition for that. But if you go back and really watch those games, Leonard Fournette did not really do anything special. He benefited from a super talented supporting cast. He's not elusive. He had a bunch of big untouched runs. And he's just very much a replacement level NFL running back. And teams show that they understand that, or that they understood that when the Jaguars cut Leonard Fournette last August and he got a 1-year, $2 million deal. Mm-hmm. And I think he might get a little bit more than that this offseason, maybe, but maybe from the Bucs. But I don't know. I think he could also easily end up as a backup somewhere, but he's very much in this tier with Chris Carson and a couple of the guys that we're going to talk about next, where, he's not going to get very much money.
Yeah. One other thing about the way he played in the playoffs, their offensive line, played so well. And wherever Leonard Fournette ends up, the offensive line situation is almost certainly going to be worse. And when you're not elusive, offensive line play is going to be huge. Bucs offensive line was just so impressive. Number 4 here in terms of free agent running backs, Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake played on an $8.4 million transition tag last year, which turned out to be a pretty good deal for him. He didn't really run away with the job, especially in the pass game. 31 targets in 15 games. for Kenyon Drake. I don't even know how that's possible. But yeah, I think we both like Chase Edmonds. I also think that there's something wrong last year with the Cardinals' run game to some degree, and everybody should know by now what I think about Cliff Kingsbury, the picture, the face of the fake sharp. Kenyon Drake, I can't see him getting much money. What do you think about Kenyon Drake's market?
I just say that he's on pace at this point to have a journeyman career, and that's fine. He's never been more than a committee back, really, even dating back to college. Remember at Alabama, Kenyon Drake never exceeded 92 rushing attempts in an individual season. And this is a guy that was in college for 4 years. And then last year, when the Cardinals committed $8.4 million to Kenyon Drake on the transition tag, they still didn't use him as an every down back. They involved Chase Edmonds a ton, especially to Drake's detriment in the passing game. Mm-hmm. And Kenyon Drake did miss one game, but he only wound up playing 54% of the Cardinals' offensive snaps. So I think he's just a committee back. The more that the sample size enlarges, going from 4 years in college to now, 5 or 6 years in the NFL, he's a role player back. He's been that his entire football playing career. That's how he's going to be treated in free agency. So again, another guy in this tier with Fournette and Chris Carson that I think is going to land in the 1 year, $3 million range, maybe.
Yeah. I think a more interesting question is if Kenyon Drake walks, what does that say about what the Cardinals think about Chase Edmonds? I mean, Chase Edmonds as a clear-cut feature back, I think would be pretty exciting, even if you think there's problems in general with Arizona's run game. I mean, what do you think about Chase Edmonds' dynasty / best ball value right now?
Well, I would love to see that, because I've been a Chase Edmonds believer since his inception into the NFL. But the reality is the Cardinals would almost certainly just bring in another guy, and I don't know. They've given Chase Edmonds opportunities at big workloads. I think it's tough to envision them entering the season with him, in a 20 touch per game role.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of one of these backs that could come in and kind of steal carries, steal work from guys that we like, Le'Veon Bell is 29 years old now. But remember, Le'Veon Bell sat out all of 2018. He barely played in 2020. And remember, this is a guy who got a 4-year, $52 million contract from the Jets in March of 2019, 2 years ago, $52 million Le'Veon Bell got. Since then, he got dumped by the Jets, healthy scratch for the Chiefs throughout their Super Bowl run. Again, 29 years old, but dare I say a young 29? Like he's barely played in 2 out of the last 3 years. I could see a team signing Le'Veon Bell as like a complement to Chase Edmonds type or something like that. What do you think about Le'Veon Bell at this point?
We just haven't seen him play well in a really long time. Including that year that he sat out. I mean, I thought it was evident at that time that it was probably a bad career decision for him to sit out that entire season. He did wind up getting, a big contract, and I'm glad for him that he was able to secure, a lot of that money that they signed him to. But I mean, we haven't seen Le'Veon Bell be a good player in a long time. So I think that's going to be reflected in his free agent market.
I mean, he was a healthy scratch behind Darrell Williams. Like he wasn't a healthy scratch behind like anybody good. I mean, and I trust Bieniemy and Andy Reid talent evaluation. I just think he's fresh for a 29-year-old, so I could see him having a little bit of a market. But yeah, nothing spectacular. One interesting one, Duke Johnson got dumped by Houston. We've been begging the NFL to find a role for Duke Johnson for like 5 years. Now he can pick whatever team that he wants. He's not traded. He's not under draft contract. Duke Johnson is free to pick whatever team he wants now. Can he find a team that will actually use his skill set? Because if used correctly, I still think Duke Johnson could be one of the better pass down backs, change of pace on early down backs in the league. So I'm excited to see where Duke Johnson lands. Like this feels like his big chance. Any ideas on Duke Johnson?
Well, he also did get some pretty big chances in 2020, and he kind of flubbed them. So
yeah,
that's working against him. He got opportunities and he didn't capitalize on them, and that's what it comes down to in this league. And I think that he's going to probably sign for somewhere on the veteran minimum, and he's going to have to like compete for a roster spot. And I don't know, maybe he'll get another opportunity in 2021. For a couple of spot starts or something. But when you get opportunities I don't care how long you've been in the league or anything, when you get opportunities and you don't capitalize on them, those opportunities dry up. And that's what happened with Duke Johnson.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm still clinging to priors too much on Duke Johnson. I still think he can help a team for sure. Like you mentioned Atlanta. Like I think Duke Johnson would be awesome on Atlanta paired with another running back.
He also could be a guy that just sucks fantasy value out of the other guy in the backfield, by playing. I mean, he's always kind of played like a lot of snaps because he can play in the passing game. But then that ends up hurting the other guy in the backfield and just turns into a fantasy disaster.
For sure. We'll get to some of these guys here. Like at the bottom of the list, we have James Conner, we have Mark Ingram, Marlon Mack, Todd Gurley. Like at least Duke Johnson can give you something those other guys can't really. At least he can be explosive in the pass game, but maybe I'm just too high on him. But like James Conner, like I could find a dude, coming out of college in the 5th round right now. I feel like that can do the same thing that James Conner can do. James Conner, I mean, couldn't even separate from Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland. I don't think there's speculation from ESPN today, actually, that Pittsburgh doesn't want to bring James Conner back, won't bring James Conner back. Matt Canada, I believe, coached Anthony McFarland at Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. So there's some connection there. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like Pittsburgh's running back situation, they're just going to throw the ball in every play with Big Ben anyways, but it's at least interesting from a pass catching perspective. What do you think Pittsburgh's going to do? And what do you think the market is, if any, for James Conner?
I don't know what Pittsburgh's going to do, but we're just going to have to wait and see. But these guys, at the end, I mean, even Marlon Mack, who's still young, and I think he can play. Like he's coming off a torn Achilles. Mm-hmm. Running backs do not easily come back from Achilles tears. James White is a free agent. Yeah. And he's like purely a role player who I think you could make the argument that very much to the extent that he was kind of a product of Tom Brady, Mark Ingram, Todd Gurley, like even James Conner. I think that some of these guys might not even resurface really in the NFL, or maybe they'll, wait till late in training camp, but it's not a very interesting group of free agents beyond those first 2 tiers, with Aaron Jones alone in the first tier. And then, the guys like Chris Carson and Leonard Fournette in that second tier. After that, it's not a very good crop of free agent running backs.
I could see the Bucs, if Fournette walks, getting in on James White and pairing James White with Ronald Jones, and bring back that Brady, James White familiarity. I think that would make some sense for James White.
It would.
For sure. But yeah, it's crazy. Like Gurley and Le'Veon Bell, like the face of the running back position just like 2 or 3 years ago, both could be out of the league. Like that's possible. It's so crazy. Same with Mark Ingram, as you mentioned. Okay. Tight ends. Biggest story, I mean, at least one of the biggest stories for me this offseason is what happens with Hunter Henry. I don't know if the Chargers are going to keep Hunter Henry. What I do know is that the only other tight end under contract for the Chargers right now is Donald Big Dick Parham. He of the 6'9" nice frame. He of the President Team XFL. I mean, free Donald Parham movement is on in a big way. Even Virgil Green is a free agent also. Hunter Henry played under the franchise tag last year. Could they franchise tag him again? We've heard Hunter Henry be linked to the Patriots. 10 million, 11 million per year. It's a lot to pay for Hunter Henry. Very, very good player. But man, free Donald Parham. What do you think is going to happen here, Evan?
I can't even talk to you about Hunter Henry because it just always comes back to Donald Parham. But no, 2020 was not Hunter Henry's best season. He finished 28th among 48 tight ends in yards per route run, 6.6 yards per target, a career low. There was a lot of change. The Chargers turned to a rookie quarterback when they didn't expect to. Their offensive line was makeshift at best all year. But I mean, I still view Hunter Henry at age 26 a major asset at a position in the NFL that I think gains value every season. The Chargers can keep him on the franchise tag for a second straight year, $10.2 million on this year's tag. He can block. He's an excellent possession and red zone receiver. And I think he's not a player that the Chargers should let get away, despite your overwhelming biases. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, I think that they should bring back Hunter Henry and Donald Parham, and that would give them a lot of personnel package flexibility and explosiveness on the field. I mean, Donald Parham is a really good athlete. In addition to his size, he's got left tackle like arms. And I do think that I agree with you that he deserves more playing time, but I also think they should bring back Hunter Henry.
Yep. Jonnu Smith is a free agent. And I don't think Jonnu Smith's ever going to be like a huge catch guy. Like he's never going to catch like 90 balls, but very, very, very good player, I think, in the red zone, blocking, just like an all-around tight end, like, you know, a poor man's or a later career Rob Gronkowski or something like that. You know, Jonnu Smith can play. I think he's an important part of real life football teams, even if you don't think he can be explosive in fantasy. So I think he's pretty clearly alone. Like for me, he's way ahead of Gerald Everett or Gronk or some of these other tight ends. Jonnu Smith to me would be right there with Hunter Henry in terms of NFL real life value. What do you think about Jonnu?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, if you go back to his college career, he was a big time pass catcher in college. So he's got that on his resume, at least. And I think he's been a guy who's always had a fantasy tight end one skill set because he doesn't need to come off the field. He can block. Mm-hmm. He's a tier one athlete. He can make big plays after the catch. You know, he's got like a pretty good highlight reel in the NFL if you just isolate his big plays. And he just hasn't had a ton of pass catching opportunity because of the style of offense that they ran in Tennessee. He's always been involved in run first offenses. And over the past 2 years, he essentially shared time with guys like Ferkser and Michael Pruitt. So I think it's a matter of opportunity with Jonnu Smith. Can he get into a situation where, the team that he plays for throws the ball with more volume? Because he doesn't need to come off the field. I mean, he can be in every down time. He's 25 years old. So I think he'd be an awesome investment for almost any team. And it's going to be, I'm excited to see where he goes. I think he's got like legit upside.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting for sure. And maybe the Titans can try to bring him back too. I mean, letting both Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, both of them walk, I think would be pretty detrimental to the Titans team. Gerald Everett has been sharing time with Tyler Higbee. I think there's been a case to be made that Gerald Everett maybe has been the better player than Tyler Higbee, even though Tyler Higbee's gotten more of the accolades, mainly due to that late season run in 2019. But yeah, I think Gerald Everett is likely gone from the Rams. Still think dude can play some. Any idea where you think Gerald Everett could land? What kind of market he'll have?
Yeah, not sure where he's going to go. I mean, the first thing that you kind of, I think when you're trying to, connect dots here is you just look at, well, the assistants on his former team, like Shane Waldron going to Seattle. Could he end up in Seattle? Greg Olson's not coming back. Jacob Hollister is a free agent. And actually Gerald Everett has had some good games against Seattle historically. And if you look at Rich Rebar has pointed this out and put some data behind it, that teams tend to target players against whom they've had good games historically. And Gerald Everett fits that bill for going up against Seattle. And now you have the assistant, Shane Waldron, now the OC, formerly of the Rams. So I think that Seattle would be an interesting landing spot for him. He's a great athlete. He's not a blocker, and he's sort of been an underachiever in his career. I mean, he's below 7 career yards per target. But I mean, he's had some really impressive moments, and he's another guy that I think, he's got a shot there. Like later career breakouts at the tight end position are not uncommon at all, because these guys come into the league, they're asked to perform multiple responsibilities. We know about the rookie tight end narrative. It's not just a narrative. It's a reality that tight ends struggle early in their NFL careers. And so later career breakouts at that position are quite common.
That's why it's so bad to use a early first round pick at the tight end position, because by the time they're acclimated and stars, you're already ready for their second contract. It's way better, I think, to take shots on guys like Jonnu or Hunter Henry, Gerald Everett's second contract guys, than spend top 10 draft capital at the position.
Except for this Kyle Pitts dude coming out of Florida, though, man. I don't know, man. I mean, he's won the motherfucking Mackey Award, and I mean, he looks like Calvin Johnson. I mean, or something. He's he might be the exception to the rule. We'll see.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm excited to look at it. I mean, I know everybody's excited about him. Draft is going to come up soon after free agency. We'll for sure be looking at that. But yeah, Mackey Award. Rob Gronkowski is a free agent. I can't fathom Rob Gronkowski going anywhere except for Tampa. And so I think he'll almost certainly back. He wants to come back. He'll only come back for Tampa. And Rob Gronkowski actually I think I read somewhere he hasn't spent a single dollar of his salary in the NFL. He's only spent endorsement money. Like, I don't think he really needs money too badly. Dude can obviously print money whenever he wants on endorsements. So yeah, I think he'll almost certainly be back in Tampa. And, I was, obviously ragging on Rob Gronkowski a lot. Thought he got better as the year went on, looked like looser out there as the year went on. And then he broke the slate in the Super Bowl, broke the showdown slate in the Super Bowl, had a huge game there. So yeah, I think almost certainly Rob Gronkowski will be back with Tampa. You see it going any other way?
No, he's going back to the Bucks, and I don't know. We'll have to debate him hard again. He's going to be a year older now.
Yeah. I mean, he's not someone I'd want to start in fantasy. I mean, but yeah, the position is so bad. I guess you never know. But Jared Cook, Dan Arnold, Trey Burton, bunch of dusty guys down here. Dan Arnold is someone who, had some chances, made some big plays. He kind of looks like super athletic out there. I believe he's only like 220 pounds, which is obviously really light for a tight end. But I'm always intrigued by these guys who are like basically glorified wide receivers with tight end eligibility. I'm not saying that's Dan Arnold per se, but I at least think he has a chance. Trey Burton has always been an athletic guy that I think has a chance when used correctly, although there's some weird stuff going on, I think, for Trey Burton. And then Jared Cook, getting old, but Jared Cook has always been like a major mismatch for teams to line up with against Jared Cook. Any thoughts on those guys or anybody else that's a free agent at the tight end position?
Jared Cook really started to look his age, I think, this past year. Wasn't nearly as reliable a target. He's 34 years old now. Dan Arnold, I agree with you. He's pretty interesting. He's just a guy that, to monitor where he might land in free agency. It's going to be hard for a guy like that to find like a clear-cut path to consistent playing time. But definitely a guy that we'll have to keep our eye on. He actually did play wide receiver in college, spent some time with the Saints and made some big plays last year for Arizona. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty bottom of the barrel stuff down here.
Yeah. I think Jacksonville's a pretty tight end needy team. I'm curious if they do something in free agency at the tight end position and see what they can build for Trevor Lawrence down there. They've been linked to all kinds of wide receivers and tight ends, and kind of like building an offense from scratch, I think is exciting. It's exciting for Visca as well. All right. It's going to do it for this free agency preview of the running back and tight end position. If you're interested in wide receiver and quarterback, be sure you listen to the previous episode. We'll be back next week for more football talk. For Evan, for producer Luke, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.